bearer of the curse. Seek soul, seek the king. That can I finish just one sentence without you Okay, real mature. I'm glad we could be. Don't come crying to me when you lose. You have the attention span of a 5-year-old. Your mother's a fat, stinking pile of I regret nothing.
9 years ago, a close friend of mine told me, "Hey CJ, your breath smells like were you eating my dog when I wasn't looking, you big forehead aw shit breath boy?" And that really hurt my feelings. When I stopped crying, he told me about this wonderful, mysterious new game he had been playing. He painted a beautiful word picture of thick fog that covered the gates of mysterious new lands, and massive bosses that strike fear in the heart of any who gaze upon them. I told myself that surely he was exaggerating. No video game could be this grandiose. So we sat down, turned on his Xbox, removed his hand from my inner thigh, and launched the game. The moment I stepped into the hub area and that awe-inspiring jingle just tickled my ear pussies, I was hooked. So many sleepless nights, staying up, dying to bosses, so many builds and characters I made, just trying to squeeze out every ounce of fun that I could. And that, people, is the story of the first time I ever played Bloodborne. But Dark Souls 2 is also good, I guess, so let's make a video on it.
All people come.
I am joking, of course. Peak Souls 2 was my first ever Souls title, and even today still stands as my favorite. Now, I wanted the challenge for this video to reflect on something amazing that Dark Souls 2 did, and that's having nearly double the number of boss encounters compared to the previous title, which means double the amount of boss weapons available to the player. Some of these armaments are completely game-breaking, while others are making me want to break my game. So let's briefly go over the rules of the challenge. First, I can only attack enemies using boss weapons. That one's a given. Second, try two-handing. Wait, no, that's not okay. I see what you did there. Woman ahead, therefore try rear? Which one of you perverts wrote that?
Oh!
Second, after killing a boss, I have to rotate out the weapon I'm currently using and replace it with the weapon of the boss that was just killed. These rules do, however, create a unique predicament, since I'll have to first find a way to procure a boss weapon without attacking, and somehow make my way to Strayed, who is locked behind 3 required boss encounters. How will he do it? Who knows? You'll just have to watch and find out. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. When it comes to meal planning, I am just so burnt out on the entire process. Being a vegetarian in a small town means my food options are incredibly limited, but I know that every time a Factor box shows up on my front doorstep, it's gonna be packed with fresh, never frozen, chef-crafted meals. But not just for vegetarians, of course. They've got keto, high protein, low carb, fiber-filled, everything. I mean, the menu is just massive, and it rotates on a weekly basis, so you always get to try something new. Today for dinner, I had a Caribbean spiced tofu with black beans, rice, mango salsa, and coconut jerk sauce. I simply threw it in the microwave for a few minutes and then absolutely destroyed it like an animal. So if you're fed up with the pain of meal planning, or maybe just trying to eat better, head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code BiscuitSticksFB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code BiscuitSticksFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. Using my code lets them know I sent you, and it really, really helps out the channel. Thank you again, Factor, for sponsoring the video. Now back to the content. All the presets in this game make your character look like a crayon-eating cartoon, so I rushed through it, choosing Warrior for the class and Bonfire aesthetic for my gift. I did, however, manage a perfect all people come dialogue skip.
All people come.
It's actually freaking hilarious. I have so much to do before I can even put a boss weapon in my grippers, so as soon as I arrive in Majula, I push out the unfettered wave of nostalgia that washes over me from this OST and join the Covenant of Champions, allowing enemies to respawn infinitely. Then, after lighting the first bonfire in Hyde's Tower, I position myself just right on this ledge and wait for the knight to get close. Just as he starts to swing, you can walk around him and he'll fall off the ledge, netting a smattering of souls. Just repeat this process for a painful amount amount of time to create an infinite soul farm without attacking. At 26k, I run back to Moglin and create generational wealth for him and his family. Once his stock has been upgraded, a quick bonfire aesthetic is all that's needed to give me quick access to the most broken piece of armor to ever exist in a Souls title. That of course is the butterfly skirt. While not fashionable, it does allow the wearer to jump without running, unlocking all sorts of game-breaking shenanigans. The most popular of which is the parry walk, the exact thing I need to skip the 3 required bosses before Strayed. Only one problem: I don't know how to parry walk. Thankfully, a certain legendary speedrunner already has a great video detailing how to do it on PC. It took a lot of trial and error, but eventually I got confident enough to be able to replicate this strat on a fairly consistent basis. All you have to do is parry an enemy, then once they fall down for the right post, walk backwards and to the right only for a second before pressing your inputs for jump and attack at the same time. If executed properly, you'll hop through the enemy and obtain the gift of momentary flight. Now, how do I use this to skip the giant, the pursuer, and the ruined sentinels? Huge shout out to PeachyMike, your video made this run possible, link in the description of course. Start by having the turtle commit Sudoku, then aggroing this lonely hollow. Parry walk, approach this ladder, and run into it for just a few seconds. For some reason, the game registers your distance even though the ladder is stopping you from moving, but when you finally climb onto the ladder, it shoots you forward, clipping through multiple walls. When the parry walk runs out, you've skipped the door that requires the soldier key. Just do the same on the enemies before the pursuer boss fog, and you can walk all the way around his boss room. I've only got one more boss to skip, and that's the ruined sentinels. Oh, I can't tell you how long that took, how many tries that took to finally get it. Oh, that feels really good.
Oh shit! You just busted a nut.
PeachyMike's Ruined Sentinel skip requires attacking Lucatiel to parry walk, but with no boss weapon and therefore no way to attack, I've got to figure this one out on my own. I tried going around the sides of these buildings, but always ran out of time. I tried using the pyromancers to parry walk instead, but for some reason they just don't work. I thought I got close by running up this mountain, but there's just no way to drop into the rooms below. I spent hours and hours just trying to find something, anything to get past this gate. Right when I was about to give up, I struck gold. First, the pyromancers have to blow themselves up to give me the space needed to execute the parry walk. Then, I lure the soldiers over to this break in the railing. Once the parry walk starts, you have to climb up right in the middle between these 2 mountains, and when you break through, make sure you don't land on any of the rooms below. Then, walk to the left of McDuff's workshop, and when the parry walk wears off, you'll find yourself on the other side of the gate. This gives me access to the post-century bonfire before I have to execute just one last parry walk. Just for the record, this guy's health is low because he attacked a barrel, not because I hit him. Just wanted to point that out. Once you've parry walked, run off into the right of the broken bridge. Climb up the invisible rocks, and voila! I now have access to Strayed without attacking even one single enemy or killing even one single boss. Obtaining a boss's soul without a weapon is actually super easy. Just let the Dragon Rider go for a swim, then use the souls to level up enough to actually use his weapon. For the Dragon Rider, you have 3 different weapons to choose from, but for now, I'm going with the halberd. Finally, after 4 or 5 hours, I can actually start to play the game. Just a quick disclaimer, I am simply sharing my opinion about these weapons. If you don't agree, that's completely fine, but there's a lot of them to cover. Therefore, to prevent this video from being an hour long, I'm moving quick, so buckle in. I spent the next few hours just clearing mobs and picking up items. The Dragon Rider Halberd is not a bad weapon. It has really great reach and split damage between slashing and magic, but it has this kind of bizarre interaction where if you're too close to the enemy, it does less damage since you're hitting it with the hilt instead of the blade. It also uses a ton of stamina, which I'm not crazy about. Around this time, I realized I would eventually need Ornifex unlocked as well, so I made my way to the Shaded Woods. After saving her, my next boss was Scorpionish Najka, and for some reason, I actually struggled with this fight, likely due to her magic resistance, which is half the damage I'm doing. After a few frustrating deaths that I blamed on my lack of ADP and my Estus healing not applying for 3 fucking business days, I grabbed another aesthetic, killed the Dragon Rider again, leveled up a bit more, and switched to the Dragon Rider bow. When she does her slam attack, you can actually run up her tail, and if you don't move a muscle, her targeting just breaks, allowing you to give her back shots until the cows come home. The damage is still abysmal, but after some time, I whittle her health down to 0. Her boss soul gives a spell, which is not a weapon, so I move on, making my way to the Royal Rat Authority. The bow helps in picking off the ads, then by sticking to its back legs, it dies easy enough. Both the rat and the congregation don't give boss weapons, ergo, all those delicious souls shall be pumped into levels. The bonfire next to Ornifex is now lit, and I'm really getting sick of using these weapons. Time to switch them out. The last giant has a pathetic health pull and dies immediately, allowing me to switch to his great axe. The moveset isn't bad, but even though it looks like it would do striking damage, it instead does slash, and there's really just nothing else special about it. We'll just quickly use it to beat the pursuer. Now back in the day, I died to this guy a lot, and that was before I knew you could actually use the ballistas. Instead, I just learned how to parry him. Even though the damage on this weapon is one of the worst in the entire game, I still managed to beat the pursuer without taking a single hit. With his ultra great sword in hand, I made my way to the first of the 4 major bosses, the Duke's Dear Freya. One of the reasons I decided to do this run in the first place was to try a lot of the weapons I've been sleeping on over the years. The Pursuer's ultra great sword is one of those weapons. It has wonderful reach, high base damage, and a starting strength scaling of B. It's a bummer I didn't get to use it for much longer, as it completely and totally wiped the floor with Freya. With her dead, I unfortunately had to say goodbye for now and switch to Freya's rapier. Now this weapon, shoo-wee! Yeah, this thing fucking sucks. I really should have picked the curved sword instead. The moveset is fine, and it even scales to S on dexterity if leveled all the way, but it's just so brittle. After killing the Rat Vanguard, I realized it doesn't drop a boss soul, and thankfully the Rotten isn't a very tough boss, because just look at that damage. But as the old adage goes, if the damage is yellow, we're feeling mellow. Now his cleaver is a different story entirely. Pretty quick attacks with decent range for a cleaver, and it even heals for 8% of damage dealt, but the healing is pretty negligible. I used it to kill the Ruined Sentinels, and since they give a spell for their soul, I used it instead to get dripped out. The Alva set has always been one of my faves, and I was really happy to see it brought back in Dark Souls 3 and Night Rain. Next in line are the Skeleton Lords. With a bit of pine resin, this thing's doing very decent damage considering it's not leveled at all, but this is where I did a little bit of an oopsie. After getting the Roaring Halberd, I realized I needed 12 intelligence and faith to be able to wield it properly. I completely forgot about soul vessels and decided to instead aesthetic the pursuer and kill him again so I could go back to his weapon. After a few hits, I quickly realized that the weapon would just break long before I ever actually killed him, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I used the ballista to kill him instead. In my editor's notes, I tried to justify it by saying it was an environmental kill, but I don't know. It made sense at the time. You be the judge. With that, I moved on to Earthen Peak and challenged the most underwhelming boss in gaming history. For some reason, they let you shoot down these urns with the hollows trapped inside to distract the boss. Not that you would ever need the help, but it's pretty cool nonetheless. The Bone Scythe is much more interesting than the boss that it comes from, with it having a decent enough moveset and scaling with strength instead of dex, like most scythes. But I don't want to talk about the Bone Scythe. I want to talk about the weapon we get from Mytha. This unassuming dagger is yet another weapon I had been sleeping on for the decade I've been playing this game. It comes with the standard dagger moveset, but this is the only weapon in the game that applies both poison and toxic. I've been saving this beauty for one boss in particular that has a certain weakness to slash, but I did not anticipate it would perform this well. Finally, a Souls title where poison isn't completely worthless. That was so fucking easy, dude. This dagger's kind of insane. The Sinner's Greatsword is fine. Damage is non-negligible since I'm running a quality build. I used it to beat Ornstein, which in turn gave me access to my favorite weapon in this entire game, the Dragon Slayer's Spear. This thing absolutely dominates in both PvP and PvE. Stamina usage is pretty high, but in turn you get split damage between thrust and lightning, paired with ridiculous range and a heavy attack that does stupid damage with the Leo Ring. I used it to quickly dispatch the old Iron King, opening the path to Drangleic Castle. Now, even though the Iron King hammer looks cool, does striking damage, which most enemies are weak to, and even has a special heavy attack, it still manages to be insanely underwhelming in the damage department. Most of these weapons I'm either not leveling or only bringing to +2, so maybe that's why. I think it has a lot of potential, I'll say that. You probably just need a dedicated build, which this is not. As a result, I died to the Dragon Rider twins a lot more than I probably should have, but after separating them and focusing one at a time, I switched the hammer for the last of the Dragon Rider weapons. This twin blade also does split magic damage just like the others, and Smelter Demon just so happens to be weak to magic. Fighting this dude back in the day felt impossible, but with some decent life gems, I squeak out a win. On paper, the Smelter Sword shouldn't be really that good. Short range, slow arcing light attacks, and split damage between slashing and fire, but for some reason it still just manages to be everything the Iron King hammer wishes it was. Just spam R2, that's all you need, and everything just dies. Regardless of the incredibly annoying hitbox on that big ass shield, the Looking Glass Knight goes down and I switch to his weapon. Yet another one that I feel like I've really been sleeping on. The one-handed light attacks come out pretty fast, and the heavy attack does a lightning projectile similar to the Dragon Slayer spear. But I didn't get much time with it, since I immediately used an aesthetic on Freya to get the fan favorite Moonlight Blade. Maybe this is controversial, but I did not enjoy using this weapon. Granted, I don't think there's any weapons that's not a bow that make this place not feel like a slog. Whose idea was it to put the equipment shattering bug between the boss fight and the bonfire? The Demon of Song. It was whatever. I think this guy only has like 3 attacks. Now, I was pretty stoked to try his weapon since people love the whips in this game, but outside of the status buildup, it just felt lackluster. I used it to beat the Flexile Sentry, and you already know which weapon I'm choosing. The Warped Sword, in my opinion, is the perfect weapon. Great scaling, fast attacks, high poise damage, and obtained pretty early in the game. This thing could easily carry you from start to finish with no problems at all. I used it to beat Velstadt, and while I barely have any levels in this thing, I still managed to take him down. Moving on to the Sacred Chime Hammer. It does do strike damage, which already makes it decent, but this heavy attack really needed a rework. I don't think I ever actually hit an enemy with it, even once. I used it to clear Aldia's Keep and kill the Guardian Dragon before switching to the Drakewing Ultra. As I mentioned, I've been forced to use my Dragon Bones to level weapons sparingly, but now that Aldia's Keep is cleared, I can start to actually farm them and bonfire aesthetics. If you burn an aesthetic at this bonfire, then run out, grab the loot on the body, then kill this hollow, you can repeat until you have as many of either item as you need. The farming is super mundane, so after about 45 Dragon Bones, I moved on. Now, it's time to collect the Giant Souls for the Vendrick fight. Using the Ashen Mistheart to go back in time and take part in the war against the giants is just so incredibly cool. It really feels like an actual war with both sides fighting to the death and taking massive losses. Killing the Giant Lord was also very nostalgic. I remember farming this guy for hours and hours to reach ridiculous levels. His boss soul only gives a spell, which is a bummer since using his weapon would have been awesome. Next up was the Ancient Dragon. When he pulls his legs back for a breath attack, just run in and chip away at his health. I went ahead and traveled back in time to get his actual weapon, and it got me thinking. This place looks a lot like where Gwyn fought his war against the large stone-like dragons in the first game. The wiki says this is the remains of Ash Lake after it dried up, but I don't know. The Curved Dragon Greatsword is a quality build's wet dream. At +5, it has a very healthy amount of base damage, S scaling in dex, and B scaling in strength. You can buff it with resins, and if that wasn't enough, the heavy attack sends out a wind gust with way too much range. Mine is only at +2, and it still is more than enough to take down Vendrick. He doesn't actually drop a boss soul when he dies, so for now, I'm gonna save his weapon for a flavor win later on. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to start the DLCs. But first, I need to obtain some new swag. In the original game, before Scholar of the First Sin, there were a few armor sets that could only be obtained by relentlessly grinding specific Black Phantoms over and over. Now, in this version of the game, you only need to enter New Game Plus and find the armor spread throughout certain chests. But I'm not going into New Game Plus, and I really want my old school drip. So, after obtaining a handful of rusted coins, the gold serpent ring, and the jester hat, I got to work. After killing the Black Phantom located here before the Flexile Sentry, he'll sometimes drop a piece of the Armor of Horus, the not invisible set. If you didn't get what you need, and half the time you won't, you're forced to fight the boss before you can use another aesthetic. Now this is where I made another goof. After killing the Sentry for the first time, I was supposed to get another warped sword and just power stance them, but I forgot. So, my bad. After, not kidding, 3 consecutive hours, I farmed the pieces I wanted. Just slap on Velstadt's helm, which matches the bronze part of the skirt, and you've officially got yourself CJ's signature Dark Souls 2 fashion. I used all of my spare Twinkling Titanite to level up the different pieces, then started the first of the DLCs. The boss weapons found in all 3 DLCs are easily some of the most fun, unique, and powerful in the entire game. Let's take them for a spin. Like a moron, I tried fighting the invisible cat, did not go well, then slowly made my way through the icy remains of this castle. Once the ice was cleared and I could actually see the boss, it still managed to absolutely bully me. Thankfully, no matter how bad you suck, 99 life gems will get you through any boss encounter. I switched to the lightsaber, and for some reason, I remember this thing being pretty powerful, but I could not have been more wrong. It may do strike damage, but with a massive 40 dex stat requirement and no scaling, this weapon should only be used when you have the high ground. The two-handed R2 is fine, I guess, but the god-awful durability ruins any potential this weapon had. The Ivory King is actually weak to lightning, so I just went back, fought Ornstein again, and got a second copy of his weapon. It's not a Dark Souls 2 video without some power stancing, okay? Gathering the boys for one last heist was easy enough, with the spears two-shotting everything in the DLC. The actual boss fight itself, though, is so much fun. It feels like a small-scale war, and when the boss walks out at the end, oh, it's just cinematic. Using one of my few bright bugs, I'm doing a very respectable amount of damage. Thankfully, one of the boys survived and also provided a much-needed distraction. With the Ivory King defeated, we now have access to arguably the strongest weapon in the entire game. When attacking two-handed, it gets a massive energy buff added that, when both sword and energy connect, results in some ridiculous damage numbers. Also, it gets the two-handed poking heavy attack, and we love those. I decided to take it into the next DLC, but didn't want to waste its potential on some lesser boss. Using the cat legs, cat ring, and butterfly chest piece, you can easily survive a drop onto this statue's head, allowing you to skip practically half the DLC. When I killed the Fume Knight on literally my second try, I was a bit confused. I was pretty sure he had 2 weapons, not just his Ultra, which made me think there would be a phase 2. But then there wasn't. After looking it up, I realized that wearing Velstat's helm into this boss fight pisses him off and he goes straight to his second phase. And that's the reason I love this game so much. It's filled with so many cool little things such that even after over a decade, I'm still learning. Before I clear the next DLC, just like with the other videos in the marathon, I want to try a little PvP for old time's sake. And yeah, to no one's surprise, these boss weapons absolutely destroy during invasions. And you know what? I'm just gonna say it. Dark Souls 2 may be incredibly clunky, but this is by far the most fun I have doing PvP. I don't think it's balanced, and I don't think I'm particularly good at it, but for some reason it just feels fun. I tried the Warp Sword, Ancient Dragon Sword, Dual Spears, and Ivory King Sword. Out of all of them, the Ivory King Sword probably did the most damage, but the range on those dual spears is just silly. Man, oh man, do I miss the days of fight clubs at the Iron Keep. I went back in a pathetic and admittedly sad attempt to get one going, but those days are long gone now. With that out of my system, let's start the Crown of the Sunken King. Using the Fume Sword just feels good. It has the long-range downward light attacks and the amazing poke on the heavy. My only issue is you can't seem to put any sort of resin or damage buff on it. The Squalid Queen dies on my first attempt. I even got unlucky with a Velstat spawn, but it still just wasn't enough to stop the 9 foot of melted steel I was throwing around like a small child. Now Sin, the final boss, is weak to dark damage, and thankfully Alana's weapon just so happens to deal dark damage on its heavy attack, which would have been great if this guy would just hold still long enough to get an attack off. I swear, he spent more time in the air throwing fireballs than he did on the ground. Sincerely, the hardest thing about this boss fight is the camera. With Sin dead, I grabbed the 3rd crown, went back to the Shrine of Amana to get Vendrick's soul and the 4th crown, then obtained the boon from Vendrick so that in the event of death, we won't go hollow. As long as we wear one of the crowns, of course. It's finally time for the last few bosses, and holy shit, Sin's weapon absolutely chunk. Jesus Christ, did you hear that voice crack? Sin's weapon absolutely chunks. Yet another weapon I've been sleeping on this whole time. Now, instead of using a Throne Defender weapon, I instead cashed in Vendrick's soul for the giant statue with Nishandra on it. Rule of cool. Sorry, y'all. This thing not only does strike damage, but also has the 2nd highest AR of any weapon in the game. I mean, I had to show it off. Just look at that damage. With Nishandra dead, I procured her scythe and leveled it all the way to +5. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of awful. The attacks come out pretty quick, but for it being the original game's final boss, you would expect it to do like a cool dark laser or something, but it just doesn't. Now, not all the challenge runs I do are fun. like the Demon Souls video. That was pain and suffering in its purest form. But this run truly highlights everything I love about this game. If you haven't played Dark Souls 2 in a while, go back and try this for yourself because goddamn, what an experience. Maybe don't do all the parry walking shenanigans and just try playing the game normally until you unlock Strayed. But yeah, that was Dark Souls 2 using rotating boss weapons. If you enjoyed your time here and want to see the rest of the games in the Souls series, why not consider sticking around and subscribing? The channel is so close to 100k, and it's always been a long-term goal and a dream of mine to finally hit the big 100. Huge shout out to the members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Members get access to perks like a member's badge and the occasional members upload. If you're interested in becoming a member, check the description for more details. I'll see you all in the next one. Later.
All people come